Hello and welcome to Masters of the Deal, the podcast where we uncover the personal stories behind billion-dollar deal makers. As the region head for Ideals VDR, I help deal makers close their transactions faster with our virtual data rooms. Over the past 2 decades, I've got to know many of them personally and professionally, so I take this opportunity to tease out how they got to the top. Join me and learn what it takes to become a master of the deal. Ankur Singh is the Vice President and Head of Strategy and Business Development, Chemical Division at DCM Shriram Ltd, a leading conglomerate with a legacy in the chemicals, agribusiness, and manufacturing sector. He was recently honored as one of the top 10 most iconic CSOs in India. In his role, he drives the company's overall strategic growth agenda, overseeing mergers and acquisitions, something we will talk about, leading global expansion, and forging strategic partnerships that strengthen DCM Shriram's position in the market. Ankur's expertise lies in building future-ready businesses by focusing on sustainable growth, operational excellence, and innovation. Beyond strategy, he's passionate about collaborative leadership, ensuring that decisions are shaped by diverse perspectives from his team and stakeholders. Ankur, so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome to Masters of the Deal.
Pleasure, Hers. Thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate it.
20 years, right? That was quite a resume. I haven't even started. A lifetime of work, and I see a certain pattern I'd love to talk about and dive into. But let's start right at the beginning. Where are you from?
Oh, interesting. I've been a lot of places, and the fact is, I born and brought up in Eastern UP. But again, thanks to the family and the dad's job, I end up traveling up to the places. Had schooling in multiple cities, and the whole ecosystem of every 3 year you have to just pack up your bag and move as the family move. Quite resilient in terms of the childhood experiences. You tend to get to see more cities. You get acquaintance to the most diverse set of people, and of course the education. I mean, the fact I always tell people I've studied almost every board possible in India, which is kind of thing which happens. Um, but overall, the way we looked at the whole thing, I think it was uh, pretty exhilarating childhood. I mean, in terms of your experience on your study, sports were a very critical part of my life. I couldn't let it go. A lot of experiential learning as I was growing up. A lot of travel. I mean, I always tell that I was fortunate enough to travel multiple cities across the board when I was young, and it just adds up to the whole story as I get along. So yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of learning shaped up in the childhood during school times per se.
So why the traveling? Was your dad in the army, or was it
Oh, no,
just because?
he had he had a judicial job. So typically, when you are in a government job and you're a magistrate, you end up traveling roughly every 2 year, 3 year per se. So you change cities or you change environment, you meet new people, new schools, and it just adds to the whole story. Uh, it makes you mature quickly. At the same time, you are quite optimistic about what you're trying to do next. So yeah, quite an experience, I must say.
So your dad was a magistrate in the
Yes,
judicial
that's correct.
system?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Was he between work and home, were decisions very, um, what's the right word? I wouldn't say dictatorial, because judges, think about everything and tell you what to
Not,
do.
not really. I mean, I tell you what, Harsh. I mean, I come from one of the most educated families of my city, so there's tons of pressure within the family to do a lot more. I mean, the
Mm.
idea was to compete within the family. The siblings were doing quite well, and then you don't have to look out for a competition. There's a benchmark set within the family, and it's an unset expectation. Hey, you should be aware which family you comes from. So there is, and it's a positive pressure, I would say. I mean, it's just that you're consciously aware of that you are carrying a very ethical baton in your hand. One is your education. You have to grow, and at least me and my brother, he is 4 year younger to me. He is currently director HR with British Telecom, and we were left to figure out our life. It was not very intrusive, but with an unsaid mandate that, hey, whatever you do good, do with absolute focus in it, do ethically, and just keep evolving, keep building. So to that extent, I think, Harsh, it was a very, how should I say, democratized environment, with a caveat and boundaries that you should not go hayway, which to for us was quite helpful to be aligned with.
All right, so you said you have a brother who's 4 years younger. Seems
Yeah,
like he's also doing well. This weight of expectations, especially in India, and families expecting you to study and become a doctor or a lawyer or what have
yeah,
you, is an unsaid rule. It seems like it actually, there's so many stories of expect the weight of expectations kind of weighing a lot of kids down, and then that leads to them really not doing what they want to do in life or what they've actually been
yeah.
gifted to do. But in this case, it seems like it actually helped you. It wasn't imposed, but it's something that gave you the push you required to do the things which got you where you are. Would it be fair to say that?
Partially, yes. I won't say there was an absolute absence of not going down on a beaten down path of being doctor and engineer. Yes, there was an expectation from I also should try for medicals, and I kind of give it a shot, but somehow I realized my heart was not in it. I mean, and I was pretty candid to my family that, hey, I like it, but I don't think I'm meant for it. I mean, there is something different I want to do. Um, and I was pretty keen to get into academics. I mean, to be fair, management was not my first choice of career. I was doing my graduation into biochemistry, and I thought, hey, after this, I'll go for my doctorate and masters, and then probably I'll just. I wanted to get into teaching, maybe in one of the top-notch Western universities. Um, that's, I mean, as you shape up your career, you have multiple views about what you want to take up. Um, but then something happened in between, that between my graduation and my post graduation, I took an odd job with World Bank in Central and Eastern UP for fundraising programs. I think, Harsh, that has actually changed my point of view about what is it I want to do. After 6 months of my work, I came back to my father. I said, hey, I get it. I want to get into management. And he was like, are you sure? I said, yeah, yeah, pretty sure. um, yes, a couple of months of contemplation here and there, and then we were sorted. But yeah, once I decided, there was an absolute support that, now you have made up your mind, you know what you want to do, and just give your best and move ahead. So yeah, I
Oh,
mean, I won't say I wasn't under that impression I should go for a usual path. And it's quite tempting. The fact is that those usual paths have been rewarding. Whether you want to be doctor, engineer, or at least the part of India I come from, civil services are quite common for us to go ahead with. And kids
mm.
are doing wonders. A lot of kids are now post their engineering or MBA is getting back to civil services. So that charm of being authoritative and powerful in the government domain still exists. And why
Mm.
not? But yeah, that's a journey. And somehow now, if I look at it in retrospective, I think a good decision was made.
And in this case, your dad was actually in the judiciary, so that thought never came in. I can do what my dad's doing, because that's another
Oh, no,
path
it
that a
was
lot of people.
always. It's a three generation of my grandfather was a very
Wow.
known criminal lawyer. So um, there was always a way down that, hey, what's wrong? There is a name behind you. If you start, it would be a quick success. Um, Somehow I felt the kind of work I have seen my grandfather and my father doing. Those days, it wasn't those exotic. I mean, compared to what the legal profession is now, thanks to what we see both on the television and otherwise.
Mm.
But if you look at early 2000s, 1990s, the legal profession was not pretty lucrative. I mean, it's just, you know the workload was pretty extensive, and you hardly have a time to maneuver around things which you want to do. So if you personally ask me that, how things have been moved, uh, I think it was pretty destined to be where I am. And yeah, that's how I look at it.
So you mentioned biotech.
Yeah.
I noticed that the first 9 years of your career you worked with pharma, biotech, and chemicals. So I'm assuming that that path came from your studies because there was some interest
Yeah,
there. And this was with huge companies like SRF Limited, which today has a turnover of 14,300 plus crore, which is about almost $2 billion.
yeah,
And then Jubilant Life Sciences, another huge company.
that's
Then you
correct.
tried getting into the consulting side with EY as a manager for strategy and transformation
Yeah,
before you found your home at DCM Shriram, which is where
that's
you are right now. And this is another billion-dollar conglomerate. So I see a pattern here. One is that you stayed focused on pharma and chemical, and secondly, you were always in strategy. So why these two pillars?
uh, well, chemical was not a very conscious chosen field. I started my journey with pharmaceuticals. I think I started with Panisha Biotech, and it was at that point of time India's leading pharma slash vaccine company. Um, and my role was predominantly into treasury and finance. I was raising money for the company, doing foreign currency convertibles, merger and acquisitions, a bit of strategy, but more finance driven role. And it was something which was pretty exciting at that point of time. My first job, already raising $100 million in foreign currency, is quite exciting. Um, but that transition, typically, if you see in industry parlance, chemical, pharmaceutical, what we call sister industries, one is the raw material to the other finished goods. So your transition becomes smooth so far as the portfolio alignment is concerned. You understand the nuances of chemistry, you understand the formulation of doses. So to broader ecosystem wise, it's a smoother transition if you're working across these two industry. Similarly, you can look at food and ingredient. This is somewhere Jubilant was also present. You look at flavor and fragrance, nutrition. Now, if you bundle up these three, four industry, you are actually hovering in a same ecosystem, Harsh. And that actually makes overall transit. And somehow my role was, to some extent, was more developing the company into something new. If I look at my entire journey of 19, 20 years, almost $1 billion under the bucket. Various means, organic growth, inorganic growth, partnership and alliances. And what was more exciting, that even though if you see at an umbrella level, they all look like chemical slash pharmaceutical company, the portfolio were completely different. And these are the kind of industries where you need to continue to upgrade yourself. It's not an industry where you come with a prior knowledge and you feel you're going to crack it. You leave one company, you join another, you enter as a student. The dynamics changes, portfolio changes. Maybe the basics of doing business remains the same. And to be fair, it hasn't changed for the last 100 years of management, but the portfolio changes significantly. Your approach to your customer changes significantly. You are in a bulk from B to B, suddenly you get to B to C, and then from tonnages to kgs, from kgs to intermediate. So the whole ecosystem evolves. Yes, so to just sum it up, yes, there is a familiarity when you transition between these two industries, but every sector or subsector brings a new. For example, vaccine, Harsh, is a completely different play than the APIs. APIs are completely different play than the branded products in pharmaceuticals. Similarly, if you are in petrochemical and oil and gas, these are completely different field compared to bulk chemical and intermediate. Spec chem, fine chemicals, a completely different mindset you need to evolve those businesses. So it's a like ocean, and within ocean you are having a lot of tributaries of the river try to sail through.
How interesting. This is another thing that I noticed. There is this desire to, not desire only, but you actually upskilled as you were going along. So I saw that you did courses with IIM, with the Kellogg School of Management. So as you were going in between these institutes, you were also going and learning more. So
Yeah.
but two questions there. Did these courses help you? And in today's world of AI, do you think people can learn on their own?
Wow. That's a tricky question. And to be fair, I chalked out this plan. I mean, there wasn't a kind of predefined. I thought that I need to be back to school almost every 3 or 4 years. Something which is happening new, something which I need to brush up, which I do not understand. A lot of these courses, if you see, a lot of my visits to these institutions were very sectoral focus. My visit to Kellogg's was more of a longer program. I was for my executive MBA, try to see what all happening in the world. A completely different ecosystem. If you enter into Kellogg's, you realize the world has changed. And it's a seesaw difference compared to what you saw there and what you find here. My journey to other institution has been more focused on a particular course or skill set. The idea is that not only just keep evolving yourself, what is happening in the academia, the way the trends are changing, but sometimes just detach yourself from your day-to-day activities which you're doing in office, because sometimes what you're doing repeatedly, you become that thing. Now, if that thing is not evolving, you're not evolving. And by the time you realize, you are already in the fag end of your career. Um, and to me, it was more of a psychological intuition that I need to step back. And it's even more challenging, Harsh, when you're doing well, or when your career is quite progressive, linearly going, and then you don't want to experiment. And then in those conditions, you just pause and you say, hey, am I going right? Am I doing right? Do I know enough? And there comes the doubt and question. When you self doubt, you become more critical of yourself, and when you become more critical, you end up exploring a lot more thing. And that's a genesis, Harsh, where I feel that I need to be back to institution. Maybe let's say I need to upgrade myself every third or fourth year, and I hope this will continue across my career. It is definitely not stopping now, for sure.
Yeah, you are charting into philosophical territory, which I love, and I can then talk to you for 5 hours on that, which I don't have time for. But what you just said makes me then question myself. I'm doing well, right? But I have a certain path, and what you're saying is you got to disrupt this path you're on to be able to see what else is out there. Otherwise, there might be no growth because all you see is a bubble, and all you
Yeah.
do is what you've been doing. But there is a certain pattern, right? Here, you've stuck to the industry, you stuck to strategy, and at the end of the ninth year of your career, there was this shift towards advisory, which was with EY. It was a
Yeah.
very short, brief term.
Yeah.
And Sumit Chandra, the partner of strategy and transformation at EY Parthenon, said, and I quote, Ankur worked with me on numerous projects in entry strategy of a range of ingredient solutions, and intermediaries. A strong work ethic, passion to succeed, and strong networking are some of his inherent strengths. I wish him all the best for his future endeavors and may the historian in him stay alive. Now, my question is more about the last part. Why did he say, may the historian in him stay alive?
Oh yeah, I think Sumit has been a wonderful colleague. He's a senior folk in EY, and great professional. I think we often talked about that. Hey, if we wouldn't have been, doing what we are doing, what else we would have chosen? And he has his own thought. I had mine. I said, hey, I would have been teaching ancient history in Oxford. He said, are you crazy? I said, I can tell you about it. I was pretty sure about it. And I realized, he said, then why didn't you took up? I said, look, the kind of background and the kind of place I come, teaching history is perhaps at the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, this
Yeah.
is the last thing you want to pick it up. And history was not quite jazzy as those time, unless Mr. Dan Brown came into the picture, and suddenly a lot of faculties in Oxford and the Western universities started filling up with the symbology and ancient history. But yeah, I wanted to teach that, starting from ancient to medieval history in one of the Ivy Leagues or Oxford. And he says, is it a bucket list? I said, I don't know if it is a bucket list or not. I'll go with my PhD at one point of time of my career, and if time allows, I might go back to colleges. Whether I'll be teaching history or management, I don't know. But yeah,
Mm.
this is one of the off conversations which I and Sumit and one of the reason that a lot of my strategy or passion for the strategy comes from the ancient war game strategies.
Mm.
And I study them deeply. And this is the one of the topic which I suggested to my prof at Kellogg for my PhD,
Wow.
where you learn a lot from the way those times without any access to information and technology, uh, the Greeks and the Roman tend to design a long-term strategy to defeat their enemies, and this is pretty fascinating. But again, it's one of the odd thing which one looked at it, and I'm glad Sumit still remembers it.
So it's fair to say that you're a student of history.
Oh yes,
I'm
yeah.
sure you follow Ryan Holiday and his books and whatnot. Do you?
Oh yeah, Ryan Holiday, Tom Hortons. I traveled a lot, and I think that's where it comes from. I have traveled quite a bit, and combination of work travel and personal travel, and I try to explore as much as I can. I'm quite a backpacker, so very odd travel habits. So yeah, it's all add up. But yeah, books are something which is adds up to everything, and somehow I still haven't got used to that current mode of reading, which is pads
Still the
and yeah,
physical form.
I
You still
like the smell of a paper any day. That's how it is.
and are you always reading? I mean, I remember this Charlie Munger quote saying, "No successful person ever doesn't have a book in his hand. Like they're always reading."
You know, I don't know if this podcast has a allowance to be vulnerable, but I have a fear of being irrelevant,
Oh, interesting.
and therefore there is an itch to be updated all the time. I always remember an example my related grandfather gave me when he was doing his PhD from Princeton. He met Professor Miller, who actually gave a famous lock and key hypothesis for enzymes, for which he got Nobel Prize. And he was 98-year-old, sitting in his lab, and he was kind of working.
Wow.
So my grandfather, he went up to him. He said, "Professor, you're still working?" He said, "Look, I don't want anyone to say that I wasn't updated when I died." So it's an I
So
would say, so it's an itch to be updated, connected
yeah,
to the professional need, and of course, as a personal level, you want to be relevant, and you are relevant when you know something. It's pretty straight line, Harsh. That's how I see that.
amazing. I'm certainly copying that quote and putting it in my calendar, and like the itch to be updated and the fear of irrelevance.
Yeah.
Um, AI, do you think today's kids still need books or are summaries enough?
Well, it's an interesting word, and I can tell you, I have an 11-year-old son, and I'm learning. He's in seventh standard. He's doing a lot of stuff. He's doing coding. He's reading physical books as well. I mean, one habit we have, we call it Daddy's Day Out, in once in a month, where we go out and do stuff. Only the boys are allowed. So, and I'm happy that he still reads physical book. But the amount of intrigueness and education I get from him actually propels me to read more. I mean, nowadays, at least in the last 6 7 months, I've been reading a lot about AI, trying to have conversation at workplace. I am not a believer that an industrial setup like ours cannot use AI. We
Mm.
can. There is so much of pong across machinery and equipment and factories where AI can be used, and I'm amazed the way it has captured the imagination of users. I
Mm.
mean, I always tell people that it took more than 500 years to replace horses to the car, and after that, look at where we are in. So I always see AI as an enabler. It's just that
Mm.
there is a fear of catch up. I personally, I believe that my pace of learning can be a little more to just get hold of what is going on. And as a professional, I never taken a change as a threat. Change is always a disruptor, but when I look at, I don't attach it to my existence, because the day I attach a change in a world of business to my existence, I will start fearing about it, and I will not do justice by learning. I'll become quite uh, uncomfortable in terms of adopting those changes. So I
Mhm.
see it an opportunity. I am learning. And that's where perhaps the student in me helps to a certain extent. But to my mm, point of view, I think it is coming. It has come already into our system. It will come in a big way. By design, humans are comfort oriented. AI makes our life easy, so
Correct.
we can't escape it. That's how we look at it.
Well, let's get back to your career.
Yeah,
Your EY tenure was very brief,
yeah.
not even a year. Why?
Well, EY was quite an interesting experience. I mean, I got this opportunity to be in consulting. I was operating from the Singapore office. Great experience, I would say. From the day one, I was on a very critical project which actually, and perhaps I was one of the rare folks in the team who brings both chemical and pharma experiences. So there was a lot of a quality work. I think a more to do with extensive traveling. I mean, I moved bases from Delhi to Singapore, but even in Singapore, I was out of Singapore for most of the time. So I think my request to EY for those days was, hey, give me a base. I don't mind traveling, but I was a recent father. The kid was quite young, and I was like,
Mhm.
hey, it's good. It's exotic. It's great work, and EY as an organization is wonderful organization. But somewhere down the line, I felt that I was slipping in my other duties and the balancing of life. Uh, Difficult call, but I had a conversation and I took it. And to be fair, the way I see decisions are to be reviewed at the point of time they were taken. Because if I retrospectively think about decision, one either regret or one either gloat. I don't want to do either. So that's how the decision was taken, and I thought, no, it's time to be back in India and start working where I belongs to.
A lot of people want to. I just came back from Singapore, one
Mm.
of my favorite countries, not just because of how the country is, but just because of the history.
Yeah.
And I see it as one of the safest places and a very pro business place, kind of a modular world that was created, even though it's small.
Mm.
Right? You came coming back to India. Was it hard? Do you think India is home? Obviously, I know you stay fairly close to me in Delhi. If you could, would you live in Singapore and do what you're doing, or do you prefer being in India?
No, I think Singapore for me has been a second home. I still carry my long-term visa. I'm frequent to Singapore for business purpose. As a
Okay.
country and as an ecosystem, I really like it.
Mhm.
It's a place where doing work is quite easy.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, ease of doing your day-to-day activity is quite easy. What I always complain about Singapore, and a lot of my friends in Singapore don't like it. I said, this is everything is so easy, so comfortable. I mean, life is not like that, to be honest. I mean,
That's
if I send my kid to a school and he's not being bullied at all, or he's not being pushed through, so I'm little worried about him. I say, hey, he's gonna be a pretty mushy going forward in his life. And which is the beauty of Singapore. They make things very systematic, very disciplined.
Mhm.
Um, and that is why when you leave Singapore and you go to any other geography, you feel a shocker for initial some time. And for me,
Mhm.
as someone who's worked in India, coming back to Delhi or India was not easy. And all the open opportunity I had opportunities Mumbai, Bangalore, and Delhi. I choose Delhi. But again, settling in for initial 9 month, Harsh, wasn't easy because
Mm.
you get used to that synchronized lifestyle. It's not comfortable. Singapore is quite demanding culture. Work ethics are quite high. Um, when you say you're going to deliver, you better deliver, and that's how they respect you.
Correct.
Pretty professional, but it's very synchronized, and that's the word I use for Singapore. It's very linear, very synchronized. You leave something, you'll find at the same place.
Yeah.
Um, the global ecosystem doesn't operate like that. What I like about Singapore is the diversity of professional ethics, which is very
Mhm.
mature, which to some extent I didn't even find in states, which is kind of pretty progressive in terms of capitalism. Singapore balance it out, and that's the beauty of that country.
Now your home is DCM Shriram, right? It's
Yes.
been there for 9 years. This is the longest you worked with one company, so I'd safely assume that you're happy here, you're doing well. There's a lot of challenges that really feed into this always keep learning attitude that you have. Um, and you just got rewarded as an iconic chief strategy officer in India, one of the top 10. Uh, I took out a quote from that article, and it said, these are your words basically, and it said, there were three things that are part of your job: getting results, spreading the passion for your work. And my half an hour talking to you, I can tell that you're a passionate guy, and inspiring teammates and customers. Now, if you had to
Yeah.
pick one thing, the one thing, and this is one thing that I tell my team, I said, look, at the end of the day, results is what they all look at. And you can do everything else and not get the results, and they will say, you haven't worked or the results haven't come. But if you get the result and do nothing else but just get the result, they're all happy. I think that you cannot get the results without inspiring your teammates and
Yeah.
having a passion for work, right? I mean, they kind of cascade up to the result. Um, but you manage so much. I mean, I look at all the things that you do, and it's a zillion things. How do you keep focused on the one thing which really matters in your position for DCM Shriram?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And look, if you look at the strategy, business development, partnership, and when you are in a growth side of the business, when your job is to create, it's a quite fluid role, because creation is always subjective. Cost is not subjective. Cost is linear, because if you have to get into operations, is A plus B. That's all. But when you are in growth, there are so many elements which adds up to growth, so many viewpoints. In my journey of DCM of 9 years, I think the one thing I always say, DCM as an organization is perhaps one of the best places to work. Um, the support you get from the principal shareholders, the promoters, and the management, that hey, let's give it a shot. For me, it was very fortunate, but when I joined, the group was itself in a very contemplation mode, that hey, uh, it's time to grow. And there is willingness from the owners, and there's willingness from the executive team, which made my job quite easier. Coming from outside, being very young, I set up this entire department from scratch. I had my challenges for initial 6 7 months, like everybody has, but I realized I have nothing to lose. Anything and everything I do from here is bottom up. That actually gives you a lot of space to maneuver around. You interact with stakeholders, you convince them this is what we would like to do. You get one small investment approved, move it up, you build it up. And if you look at the Indian conglomerate ecosystem, it's a trust which trumps all other factors. The trust comes from your ability to see through, get it done, and if anything goes wrong, you take the ownership. So it's a combination of three, and this is very critical for at least Indian promoter-driven ecosystem. You name it, any corporation, these three things in bundle package matters. So the first investment, 35, 40 crores, then the second, then the third, and if you sum it up 9 years, roughly close to 3,500 crores, which is the highest investment period this group has seen in 100 plus years of history. Wouldn't have been possible if there wasn't a faith or the trust of the owners and the executive team that, hey, let's give it a shot. I think we can deliver it. Team, I always believe in, and it's not a dichotomy. I always say that I'm sum total of my team. I am quite demanding, and I'm unapologetic about it, because I believe that it's a team which carries the deliverables.
Yeah.
Getting job done, as you said, Harsh, is the most important thing. Somebody has to get it done. Uh, I am not a fan of employees being consultant in their own company, that everybody is advising and nobody is delivering. Somebody has to pick up the things from the whole and say, no, I'm going to do it. Um, I have been fortunate to work with youngsters who are pretty passionate and pretty energetic about their work. And therefore, if they are growing, they are happy, it transient to me. So while I'm quite demanding in terms of the work and all, and if I'm not checking in a regular interval if they're doing okay, if there is a burnout, if they are mentally stimulated enough to get into a job, does it require a role change? Can I give them something more meaty so that it picks up? Those shuffles I keep making on a regular basis. And that's how I have been treated by my bosses. I was very fortunate to work with exceptionally wonderful bosses who actually gave me a lot of space to operate. This whole thing that, all right, you go ahead, I got you back. It's such a comforting thing for someone who is growing in your career, is that there's an absolute freedom to try. If you fail, you learn from it. There is somebody watching your back, and you repeat those initiatives and try to build on it. So what I got from my bosses, I try to pass on to my team. It's just a passing of baton, nothing else.
Ankur, this sounds like music to my ears because, I've done stuff in a very different capacity. But when I was 24, I don't think I would have had the opportunity to build a business from scratch had at that time my boss didn't seen some talent or some potential in me and said, yeah, okay, but and then take it from there. And now being in a position, the ability to take calls and be trusted is huge. So in a way, I consider myself an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur even within the company. You are very entrepreneurial. I mean, to be able to try projects, build, fail, and then go on to the next project. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Partially, yes. And I won't deny that there was a lot of occasion where at least my friends wanted to pull me back to something founding of my own. I said, look, I can create a business. I'm very poor in running the business. So, and that's what. But yes, I mean, to be honest, if you are in a role like growth, where your job is to, today my group is X, this group has to be 5X in 10 years, you tend to start thinking like an entrepreneur. Because if you're not thinking like an entrepreneur, you're just thinking like a functional head or just an executive, you can count the investment, but you won't count the risk. You can count the approval, but you won't count the execution strategy. You can count the money management, but you will not count how the first kg need to be sold. So if you do not have that mindset, maybe your motivation to get the project to the daylight will diminish. And that actually the entrepreneurship, I mean, the way we look at the project, that along with the senior executive, we are attuned to look at it from an investor's point of view, that if it is my money, how will I deal with it? And that approach
Which is
really helps to make things more granular.
which was where my second question came. When you got a project, the first 40 crore project, there has to be ROI, right? I mean, they've
Yeah.
trusted you, you have to deliver. And was that the fear? What if? But at the same time, you say there was nothing to lose. So he's like, well, if I fail, I fail. But at least, but if I succeed, I'm going at it in a certain way. Was that the thinking? That was there some
Um,
fear that what if it doesn't work?
yes, yes. And not only just the first project. I think this was the time when the group is doing quite well, and we were among the top three producer of the product which we are making. Decent cash flow, nothing to worry. Now, when as a group and in any company you're doing well, and then somebody comes and say, hey, you need to diversify. He said, why? There is a decent streamline of cash flow. The business is doing quite well. The portfolio is quite decent. We are among the leading market shareholders. Why to diversify? Let the good thing go as they're going along. And then you come in and say, no, 5 year out, if you continue to expand at this rate, the margin will come under pressure because there is no enough diversification. Then getting first 35 crore rupees with lot of to and fro, lot of convincing. It wasn't a question of 35 crore. It was a question of mind change shift, that we have to go beyond what we're doing and let's experiment with this investment. And therefore, the money was secondary. Is the approach towards getting into newer product. Yes, at that particular point of time, I was running risk, not because what if this fail is a small investment. What if this fail and we go back to where we are? And then people who come after me may not be able to convince the ecosystem to deliver more. So that fear was always there. So as I said, there is always an execution guy sitting in me behind strategy. I always look at it and say, okay, this got approved. the question I always tell in Hindi, hoga kaise?
Mm.
And this worries me. And I'll be very honest about it. This keeps me on my toes. Fair enough. Board is kind. They looked at something into it. They understood. They approved the money. Now the thing is, hoga kaise?
So
And that
failure.
need to,
I mean,
yeah,
did it? So there are two parts to this, right? Number one, you were able to convince the stakeholders to diversify because
yeah,
that thinking shift had to happen. Number
yes.
two, they put faith in you and trusted your ability to get this done, which is where the Hoga Kaise comes in. So you're taking on a load and saying, okay, I have convinced them that we can do this, but now I have to do it. So has there been a failure along the way where the stakeholders questioned the trust that they had given you?
Um, I was fortunate, at least when you look at DCM as an ecosystem, it's a wonderful team over here. So it's always a collective effort. When it comes to the proposal, everybody comes along and there is a lot of internal deliberation within the team, at least at my peer group, people who are in operations and projects, finance and other element, along with the guidance of the CEO and sector anchors comes in. The idea is, yes, it's been approved. Let's make it happen. So this Hoga Kaise theory is actually a team effort because you get on the ground, people at the project have started looking at delivery timelines, then there is a procurement happening, the basic engineering design happening, the executions are going along, marketing team is getting along, sprucing up the customer base. Suddenly you realize that if you give a team what they have been looking for such a long period of time, which is diversification, everybody just spruced up and glued up, hey, now we got it, let's make it happen so that we can get more.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody owns it, a piece of it. So ideally you don't have to do much because the prospect of getting something new is so exciting that everybody in the team gets along. uh, it's to be, and honestly there is no way to take credit of it because there is a lot in it that is quite exciting in itself. You don't have to just sell it, it's being sold from day one.
Let's talk about two transactions you did.
Yeah.
The strategic agreement with Aarti Industries in September 2025. Why did DCM and Aarti decide to enter this long-term chlorine supply deal?
We and Aarti have been partnered for a very long period of time. In fact, I'll just explain you something about our industry. It's a chemical industry, and we produce certain raw material which Aarti requires, and we are operating in a same zone, separated by a couple of kilometers. And if you look at the global chemical ecosystem, the chemical doesn't travel much. What we call chemical parks. You have Ludwigshafen in Germany, Houston in US, you have Rotterdam in Europe, and then you have Jurong in Singapore, you have Dahej in Gujarat. And typically that what that ecosystem helps, the people who are into downstream or the value added chemical tends not to put up the raw material or the upstream chemical they need to make their finished product. So this is called a very symbiotic relationship between a raw material producer and a finished good producer. And to that extent, the ecosystem where we are in Gujarat, in Jagadia, we supply a lot of this material, which is chlorine, caustic, steam, hydrogen via pipeline to our customer who use them as a raw material to make value added chemical. It makes my pipeline quite tight. It just keeps the supply flowing. It incentivizes them not to invest into these downstream upstreams and focus on their core business. And both of them are running quite well. And to that extent, we have such partnership with multiple people within that 5-10 kilometer radius of our chemical zone. Aarti has been an esteemed partner for such a long period of time. And we thought, why don't we extend our partnership? We have already expanded last year. We have now second largest producer of caustic soda, almost a million ton. We also need an outlet for our product. Aarti is also in a growth mode. We started talking, hey, we have had great relationship, let's extend it. It not only saves capex, it brings the stickiness between the partner. And chemical partnerships are harsh quite long term. I mean, you invest in such a large infrastructure that those partnership continues for a long period of time. So and what we also look at as a group is to have a like-minded partner. people who attach to our ethics, and group is very conscious about it, our ethical values, which helps us to survive and grow for more than 100 years. To that extent, partner like Aarti was pretty symbiotic, and we will continue to have more such partnership. That's how we are looking at.
One of the quickest wins of a partnership like this seems predictable cash flow and growing cash flow, right? So, like you mentioned, capex is not
Yeah.
required. You're able to partner and predict what to look at for the next decade or more. What about DCM Shriram's acquisition of Hindustan Specialty Chemicals for 375 crores? What was the
That
logic
was,
behind that?
yeah, that was part of our growth strategy. We felt that, in our domain, at least chloralkali associated value chain, we have got to a quite relevant size. We realize the time has come to get into a diversification where I can create equally big business along at par with our mother business, so that the counter cyclicality can be balanced. If there is economic pressure, one business goes down, the other balances it up. And of course, the size of the balance sheet has to grow up. The ambition to create much bigger chemical portfolio. Advanced material was, as a vertical, was purely driven by a need of giving India much more modernized polymers, which is used in aerospace, paint, coating, uh, wind, composites, automotives, wires and cable. And if you see, Harsh, all these segments are driven by GDP. So as the per capita consumption of paint and coating is growing, all the raw material goes into paint and coating will also grow. And that's where we decided to get into advanced material, which comprise of epoxy resins. They go into the paint and coating, they go into aerospace, windmills, and all the application. And it has a backward integration as well, because we produce epichlorohydrin, which uses chlorine, and we want an outlet for chlorine to ensure the utilization of our plant. And we already have a caustic. So there is a complete integration. The three of the two critical raw material made in house, rest of the being bought out to make epoxy resin. Epoxy resin goes into formulation. And there is a huge shift in the way we do business, because these portfolios are more batch process, more sales driven. The bulk chemical are more volume management. You have 10 customer taking care of 50% of your volume. Here you are looking at more than 50, 60 customer with more than 250 SKUs. So suddenly your entire approach to do business shifts. You are more market in than product out. You're selling the concept. We have an innovation center in Baroda. We will be continuously upgrading our capabilities to produce advanced recipes as per your customer need. So it's not just a diversification, Harsh. It's actually moving us from our entire core business into a different territory and opening up a much broader approach of doing selling chemicals than what we have been doing so far.
How
And that's
interesting.
yeah, that's where the HSCL fits, because HSCL was among the three leading epoxy players in the country, and we felt that it's a new area we can do organically, but it will have its own time, which will require to understand and set it up. Maybe acquisition gives us a jump start. We'll understand, we'll learn, we immediately grow the business to a scale, and we do more partnership, and we'll see how things move in. But it gives us a stepping stone to quickly expedite this business into a much larger game plan.
Well, a lot of the specifics that you're talking about the industry, obviously, I do not understand as deeply. But in all of these acquisitions or partnerships, there's negotiation involved,
Yeah.
and you've been in a lot of these talks. What is the critical 20% in deal making that produces 80% of these results?
Two things. um, Patience to close. A lot of time, when there are two kind of deal, Harsh. A deal which is happening naturally. There are equal interest from buyer and seller to sell it, and both. And I'm just keeping the transaction advisory out of the picture. I'm talking about an acquirer's point of view and a seller's point of view. One sees the value creation for future, one sees the cash flow to take care of the other businesses because the business they are selling is no longer core for them, and therefore they want to cash it out. I think in this entire process, Harsh, both the parties are trying to maximize. One trying to try to see how much I can create value to my future business, and therefore what is the right price I should pay for it. The other is saying that, hey, I've grown this business to this level. How can I maximize my cash out? Now, in this entire process, Harsh, the patience plays the game, where you are keen, but you are not trying to scuttle the deal through the impatience. Second thing comes in is a constant dialogue. The typical case study says the world's 80% merchant acquisition fails.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom 10% crashes through the negotiation stage. And one of the reasons they crashes through the negotiation stage that we we have very innate inability to dissociate the numbers and the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
When you're buying something, there is a lot of negotiation involved at people to people level. There are promoters, there are executives, there are advisors, and there are a lot of communication, miscommunication, or egos being rubbed in, a kind of thing happens. And there is a number which you're trying to arrive at. When things get difficult, try to dissociate these two. And therefore, any deal starting from concept till closure goes zigzag. It's never linear. There are time when you feel, oh, it's not going through, it's getting broken. And that at that particular moment, there has to be people in the team who can say, let me pull it back. Let me bring back people on the table. Hey, let's step back. I think those interjections, Harsh, is the most critical element of a deal making. It's very easy to say deal has happened or deal has crashed. And there is a plethora of thing happens between these two. And to me, that's most important. And therefore, the way you structure your team who's part of the negotiation, there has to be one or two such people whose job is to ensure the temperature is right
Mm.
uh, during the course of negotiation.
Interesting, right? Because if someone's selling their business after generations or their own lifetime, they want to max out value and exit at the highest number possible. And you're looking at a win-win saying, well, the ROI is not there if I spend so much. What Warren Buffett calls margin of safety, right?
Yeah,
You have to look at that and saying, okay, worst case scenario. And I'm sure you do a lot of scenario analysis. What would happen?
yeah.
And getting the promoters on the other side to see this part and create a win-win scenario, I'm sure it's challenging. But like you said, patience and the ability to get them around to see the business from your point of view is where the
Yeah.
win really happens. How do you build trust though? I mean, is it again a patience game with partners, with management teams? I mean, you've been such an entrepreneur for almost a decade in DCM, Sriram. What is it that allows people to trust you?
Transparency.
Hmm.
Uh, Transparency not only in terms of informing or telling what is right or wrong, but also explaining that even if goes wrong, how it can be dealt with and what are the pitfall in the journey. A lot of time when we are doing good in our career, we become scared of failures. And when failure happen after nine success, when one failure happen, we tend to balance it out by using all our experiences that, hey, it's manageable. When deep down in our thought, we may not think it can be managed. So transparency for me is the most important thing. While I'm negotiating and talking, the idea is to keep the executive board or the senior management updated that, hey, we are in this journey of negotiation. These are the scenes which are emerging leading to these consequences, and keep getting the constant buy-ins. Merchant acquisitions are quite tricky because there are people involved and there are egos involved. And if you're not getting a constant buy-ins through a transparent mean, you'll get stuck. At least what we follow in our peer group, that, hey, make sure the bad news travel fast, good news we all take care of it. So that's how we do it. And I think a lot of credit goes to DCM as an organization. We The ethics of this group is so high that we appreciate a transparent conversation, which could be uncomfortable. We may have our debate and disagreements during the conversation, and once tempo settles down, then everybody's on board. Fair enough, let's get it done. That eases off the burden. Hush, that's how I look at it.
So what you're really doing, Ankur, though, is not really going after the objective, but also managing perception by making sure that everyone's on the same boat constantly,
Yes.
right? So the scenario is coming along, but you're also making sure that the guys above are being brought along, because between starting it and then the middle, a lot's going to change. And if they just hear the update in the middle and don't
Yeah.
see all the transitions in the middle, I'm assuming that you might lose some of those people who have big egos as well, and you won't be able to get to the next step. Am I
Yeah.
correct to summarize it that way?
Absolutely. I think the way you look at it, that uh, an acquisition or a large investment is actually an ecosystem where multiple stakeholders are involved. And for me, my approach has been that I can't do it all and I shouldn't do it all. I have a very competent peer group, and I never hesitate to rely and depend on their expertise and go back to them as vulnerable as I am, that, hey, I'm stuck. Let's sort it out. When you look at a deal, there are uh, corporate finance team get involved, legal team get involved, you have ops team get involved in terms of asset scrutiny and all. It's such a complex thing that you have no option but to rely on an expertise of your peer group who can do certain jobs better than what you can do. And sometimes when these things are happening, it's better to step back, see things unfolding, consolidate, and take it forward. A problem happens when we attach to the result and we say, all right, now it's getting culminated, am I getting my fair share? uh, to be fair, uh, I always believe that people who are running the large organization, they're absolutely aware of what is going on. So for me, and that is where your first question, getting job done, becomes more important. And my approach has always been how part is equally important as what part. So if I doesn't bring something on the table which is required to deal to be closed, I step back and let the person who's kind of more expert into that area deliver it. And that's how it works. And it's more easier with a peer group rather than your team below you, because that's how you co-create. And in DCM, actually, we have found a way of co-creating a lot of things. We work with a lot of consulting partners, you name it. All the projects are co-created. We work with our advisor, our legal advisors. um, they become us and we become them in terms of our tuning, and that makes life easy. That's how I see that.
You've answered a lot of the questions I had, even coming up. Let's go to some quick fire, philosophical, generic questions. First one being, the pressure and the stress of the job. I understand you seem very collaborative. You've got an attitude where, you put it out on the field, and, as long as you're learning and growing, I think from your side, there is no regret, is how I see it. But there's still stress. I mean, you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
And to maintain that clarity during these acquisition decisions or pitching to stakeholders, what do you do in your head, in your time, to keep calm and make sure that you're doing what's right without uh, getting weighed down by the size of the decisions being made, by the risk that's being taken?
I think one thing I have learned, and I'm still learning, and yes, there is a stress. I won't deny that, because not only just an acquisition, when you are in a growth side of a business, there are so many things moving at a very fast pace, and repercussion of each of them are different and cannot be seen absolutely when you are conceptualizing them. You never know what may they lead to after 5 year or 10 year down the line.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't operate like let's do it now and we'll see later. No, it has to be seen now, or at least it needs to be visualized now. For me, when I get overwhelmed, I just tend to detach for a while. I took a pause, I step back. I don't touch a project for let's say next 48 hours, because sometimes you are grinding so much you get overwhelmed. I step back. I just step out of the office, tell my team I'm going for a coffee or something, and I at least I don't think about the project. I think 50 other things, but not the project. That's one way to find out a clarity. And another thing which I try to do, I write a lot. So I go back to drawing board where I have started for this particular project. Hey, 6 months back when I started, what I was looking at. And sometime when I start looking at those notes and try to see whole concept where it was in, you tend to get more clarity. One of the things which I've understood, that when you're stressed, the first casualty is the clarity. You start your journey by thinking something, and when you get stressed, you think everything but the outcome of that clarity. I just, my effort has always been to go back to the very basic who I was when I was thinking about a project. Writing helps a lot. I mean, I'm pretty old school, so I have a notebook and pen. I write it. Very proud of it.
Yeah,
But
me too. Right. So it's
no, it helps because when you write, you think. When you
exactly.
speak after writing, you conceptualize and visualize. So it's a very linear process, and it's been there since the humankind. Second thing which I hush do is try to speak to the team, and try to say, hey, tell me if it's not heading in a right direction. Are we doing anything wrong? And that point of time, I step myself back. Then let them speak their mind. And let's see what they have to say. I take counsel of my seniors. I go to my CEO and I say, I'm stuck. And the power you get, Harsh, to tell someone that you are vulnerable and stuck, it actually eases off your burden big way. You're no longer special in your eyes. You are committed. You know you have skill to do the job, but sheer admitting that you are stuck eases off your burden, and suddenly thoughts start getting refreshing,
How,
and
how,
it,
how
it works.
yeah. So do you write in the morning? I wake up in the morning. That's when I have the most clarity. What I found is like, at least when I go to bed without taking a decision, tired and overwhelmed, I wake up with clarity and solutions. And I usually get it when I'm writing because it's thought on paper. And
Yeah.
do you follow something similar in terms of just your daily
I
ritual?
Yeah, I write in early in the morning. At least I plan for my week in advance. But again, the kind of role I am in, everything tossed up by Monday afternoon. So I always joke about it. Yeah, yeah. But there are three rules which I follow. I tend not to take office stress back home. Um, I
How do you
have
do that? How
I
do you do
bring
that?
I
I mean,
bring
let me actually, before even that, you said
yeah.
you step out to switch off. Now if I say don't think about the pink elephant, the only thing you can think about is the pink elephant, right? So it's like, it's like saying, well, I step out and the one thing which is bothering me I don't want to think about, because I know when I stop thinking about it, the solution will come. Like Sherlock Holmes who's smoking his pipe and suddenly
Yeah.
he gets the idea.
I
How do
tell
you
you,
switch off?
there is a different Harsh, and I hope I'm not going to say something which become controversial. I don't believe in work-life balance. I always
Hmm.
believe a place where you're spending your 10 hours of a day cannot be separated from your rest of the 14 hours of a day.
Correct.
So it's so intermingled. When I say I don't take stress home, I take work home. I take back a lot of work back home. I work here, but I don't take the stress of that work back home. I really like what Steve Jobs or maybe Bezos said once, that stress comes when you don't work.
Mm.
When you work, even if you don't get a result, at least you won't get a stress for sure. And this is pretty simple. Secondly, on my way back from my office to home, I prefer to drive down. I don't keep a driver because that's my me time of 45 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
thinking.
yeah. Thinking, and I do a lot of stuff. Listen to my music, call up old friends, listen some podcast or some ebooks. I come home, I try to play with, spend some time with family, play with my son. For the period since I leave office till I finish my dinner, I don't think about the stress attached to the work or any work. When I get back to the work, I focus on work. When I go to office next morning, yes, I will carry some stress. But the period between 6 p.m. till next morning 9 a.m., if I continue to think about it, I'll blast off. It's not possible for human to be constantly in stress. And I learned it over a period of time. It's not that I was always like that. I had my period where I was in a deep stress, where I was carrying things back home and it's not working. I was fortunate enough to get coached. So as part of our grooming program, we have professional coaches being assigned to us. A couple of my friends who are in this field, they helped a lot. Quite spiritual. I'm not religious. I'm quite spiritual. So a lot of those things connects you to your inner being.
Mm,
And I always tell people I don't take myself seriously.
mm,
My skill has existence. My own self has zero existence. So it keeps me very
yeah.
light.
Yeah, I really like what I'm hearing. So I am also not religious, but I consider myself spiritual. Stoicism helps there because it's practical philosophy.
Yeah.
Um, the way I do it, though, Ankur, is when there's stress, I tell myself, you know what, the stress or the work will still be there tomorrow morning.
Oh
So
yeah.
just switch off for the next 4 or 5 hours. Just it's okay. And then I do not open my email or Slack or whatever, because I know the minute I open it, then my mind will start again. So I say, okay,
Yeah.
done for the day. And another thing which stoicism at least has helped me is, we all are going to die. It's not like this is a never ending journey. There's a finish line, and not to take myself too seriously, right? At the end of the day, it's just uh,
But
awesome.
totally, I think one point I agree what you said. I when I get stressed, and I read Marcus Aurelius a number of time, and I always remember that every time I get stressed, hey, you have been there before as well. And
Mm,
when you were before, it didn't change your life at all. So don't worry, it will pass this time as well. Nothing will happen.
absolutely. Are you successful? How do you define success?
I am work in progress. I I I enjoy the journey more than destiny. I realize that I have this innate detachment to the end result because I have always lost the interest once I achieve something. I'm I'm utterly restless, and my family is not happy with it. They say, "You wanted it, you got it. What's the problem? You why aren't you happy?" It's just that, and I have sense of urgency, and I don't know why. I mean, this is something I'm working on. I have this unreasonable sense of urgency that as if the time is slipping by. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, Harsh, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay to let this building of stress by a way of sense of urgency be in me. Maybe I'm comfortable with it, and I can't tell this to anyone that I'm comfortable of being restless. It is what it is.
No, it was actually just last weekend. I had a day where I had nothing to do, and
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy that day at all because I was restless. And that's
Mm.
when I was like, well, I have another business which I can work on the weekend. I will go to Happy Ratio in Gurgaon and sit there and look at the numbers. And, so my mind, that's when I told myself, your mind's supposed to solve problems. It's not supposed to sit idle and do nothing. And that
Yeah.
restlessness that you're talking about, I have also come to peace with it. That it's okay. It's okay. Like it's not
Absolutely.
a. Okay, health, wealth, relationship, purpose. How would you rank these in terms of priority?
Purpose, health, relationship, wealth. Wealth is a byproduct of first three.
Future of deal making. Do you think this is whatever you've done till now, your acquisitions, your ability to negotiate, will any of this change because of AI or the world in general changing? Or do you think the principles remain the same?
No, I think uh, human tendency to maximize the value will continue, and AI can't read that, to be honest.
Mhm.
What I expect with the help of AI, the closure deal making, and the fact is, you won't expect the large scale merger and acquisition which is happening globally. They typically take 2 to 3 years to wrap up because there's so much churning is happening. I think AI gonna shorten the time frame of a big deals uh, in future, and therefore, what it leads to is a quicker synergy. Suppose if I'm acquiring a large corporation and therefore I need to synergize it so that I can grow it, that pace will increase with the help of AI. For example, a lot of our legal advisors are now using AI as a tool to get their documents being validated and all, and it is already has come into iBanking. So since the enabling forces are getting speed up because of AI, you would see a faster closure.
What profession other than your own would you have liked to work in? You mentioned you would have loved to be a professor.
Yeah,
Is that the answer? Okay. Um, is there
yeah.
anything
Any, I'll go back to academia any day. Yeah.
is there anything you haven't yet achieved personally or professionally that you still want to? Anything in your bucket list?
Oh yeah, I'm working on my book, and I'm the only I would say unlucky guy who has a lot of friends who are publishers, who's been motivating me to finish and write, and I'm the one who is not writing. A lot of people have struggled to get it published. I have a struggle to get it finished. So yeah, I've been working on it for last 2 to 3 years. Hopefully get it rolled out sometime next year. Writing, working on a fiction, and apart from that, of course, my PhD is in the horizon. I'll try to initiate soon back in there.
What's the PhD going to be on?
Same subject, trying to make the dream come true. I'm working on an ancient war game theory to link it to the modern day corporate strategy.
Wow. That sounds, I should actually connect you with somebody who's building a war game as a game.
Wow.
And you would actually hit it off because very it's that's also strategy, etc., etc. So if you could master a skill overnight, what would it be?
Um, Interesting. Master a skill in overnight. Are you talking about a technical skill or any skill?
Any skill.
Interesting. Uh, wow. Never thought about it. I think one skill I always wanted to have, and it's a cliche. I wanted to be a good cook. I want to bake a lot. I mean, baking. I'm a
Why?
huge. I'm a huge fan of bakeries. And Harsh, I know it's my dream when I retire and I have some money, I'll start a bookstore with a coffee shop with a bakery chain into it. I love the smell of bread, but maybe I'm good in eating, but not good in making. That's all I can say.
Will you ever retire? You just told me that you're a restless mind, and you gave me an
I
example of
don't
your
know.
grandfather's professor who's 98. Do you think you'll be pushed
I
out
don't
of
know.
DCM
It's
eventually
a,
when you're too old to actually be in the room? Do you think that's gonna happen?
it's a, it's a very scary thought, and more than me, my family will be scared. Now this man gonna be home. Wow.
Is he going to do what Sachin Tendulkar did? Started unboard, opening all the fans and opening all the cupboards because now where do you use all of that energy and then putting it
I
back?
believe that I'm quite a mess in it as well because suddenly I will throw away the ecosystem of house so much that maybe my wife says, you know what, you better figure out something and go out of the house. That's for the easier job to do.
All right, let's last question. If you could meet any historical figure, business or otherwise, who would it be, and what would you ask them?
Wow, that's very interesting. I'll meet Abraham Lincoln uh, because what he did at the time he did under so much of pressure, abolition of slavery and bringing America together was not easy. He could have been comfortable as a president. He chose out of go out of his comfort zone to do something different. And what I'm going to ask him that does he really believe that bringing society together the way he did have would have really mattered the way it is now? Because the ecosystem has broken. The amount of blood and sweat he spread across to make it happen, maybe it doesn't matter. He
Very
was way
interesting.
ahead of his time to bring social fabric together because he realized that America can be wealthy, but it can't be united.
But Ankur, if that's the thought, I'm actually going to write about Mahatma Gandhi in my Sunday email tomorrow. And my thought is Mahatma Gandhi was an entrepreneur, except
Yeah.
instead of a business, he created a country, right, by uniting them. But is there, even in India, that unity? Because we're so different even here. What are your thoughts on that?
India India is a place where the core value of people are still same. is not a country which is built on immigration. It's a country which existed for more than 6, 7,000 years. So there is a base in India.
Hmm.
Today we might be different state, different language, different religion, but there is an underlying base. Countries like America was by design amalgamation of various capitalistic idea. US by design never meant to be social. India is a very unique, and I don't know how India sustained. It's a classical borderline example of capitalism meeting socialism. No other country in the world can do it. Europe is not even sure whether they are capitalist or socialist. It's not easy to be an Indian. India confuses you, yet it's thriving.
Well, let's leave it at that. This was a fascinating conversation. You can definitely expect to hear back from me, not only for advice, but I just feel like there's a lot of thoughts and notes that I took that I use on a day-to-day basis. But I also learned a lot from just hearing you. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you so much. I
a
think it
great
was a
conversation.
wonderful conversation.